ending that's like really complicated and open to interpretation without needing to explain everything. While Attack on Titan's ending isn't ambiguous, it's just incomplete. A good counter argument for this is actually why not I should let you talk about what would be a good counter argument.
Well, I think that the Ymir and Mikasa aren't really meant to be the same person in a sense that they both are like the same symbol for the ending. I feel like Mikasa's meant to be like the opposite. Ymir wasn't in love with King Fritz. She was enslaved and just couldn't stop obeying him. That's why the cycle kept going for 2,000 years. So when Mikasa, someone who was deeply in love with Eren, but still decided not to submit and obey Eren, is what truly broke the curse in the end. That's what my counter debate is anyway.
I agree. That's a valid reason. The problem is here, if that's true, then why does the story treats her release as a romantic awakening? Why the parallels between Mikasa and Eren, and why is it framing of love and not liberation? It's like the story wants to go both ways, tragic and redemptive, and you just end up with neither. It just gets weird and contradictory.
Yeah, it does seem like that, like a romantic thing, but it's meant to be a bit more deeper because Ymir's love for Fritz is shown through like loyalty, devotion, and attachment, while Mikasa's love is like more emotional, protectful, and quite painful. So
Mhm.
people naturally label it as romance, but that's like the people outside of Attack on Titan. It's more about attachment under the trauma of love. It's basically not healthy love. Basically, it, it's more about emotional slavery, and it's you're just reading into like the visuals of what you see, and not the deeper meaning. Because a toxic attachment of them being shown emotionally doesn't make it romantic. It's more traumatic and tragic in a way.
That feels like an interpretation based on what you've assumed of the show, though. That doesn't feel they didn't explain it as themselves.
I mean, it's shown that Mikasa likes Eren from the training arc and how she's overprotective. And with Ymir um, chose to heal King Fritz, I think, and not leave him. So it shows it in like a weird, toxic way. But obviously, what the fans perceive, they show that Ymir's in love with Fritz is what they think, and that Mikasa's in love with Eren. If you understand.
But Mika said that is in love with Aaron. Mika said does confess. I understand it's abusive and complicated their love for each other, but it still does not explain the 2,000 years. The 2,000 years Ymir spent,
Mm.
trying to find an example to destroy this attachment through Mikasa. There's still a lot of connections that aren't like being made clear, and it still feels hollow. The whole thing. It still feels like it's just the writer who wrote this down, and the people making assumptions along the way.
Yeah, but that I feel like that's just a story.
That is the story.
The 2,000 years wasn't like particularly meant for her looking for Mikasa. She didn't like spend all of her time looking for her. All the Eldians are like connected through her power, so she experiences everything through every single Eldian, like the suffering and the repetition of obedience.
In the end, Aaron did say that he got asked like why did it have to be Mikasa. Aaron did say like he didn't know. So
Yeah.
it did seem like Ymir was looking for someone, and then it just happened to be Mikasa. And then so what do you mean there wasn't meant to be a correlation there? There was obviously meant to be a correlation between how like Mikasa treats Eren, how there's meant to be love there,
Mm.
even though it's like abusive and it's not as abusive as the way King Fitz is, because he's like Like he's like a horrible person. He's like the worst person ever. He enslaved her. He tried to kill her at the end of this, and then she just falls in love with him.
Mm.
The emotional depth there doesn't get really like explored. It's not like a good like a movie like like them with like good psycho horror movies.
Yeah.
Like what's it called? I forgot what it's called, but there's some good like psychology movies out there where they kind of like bring you into that space. They didn't bring you into the space with Attack on Titans. It was just a so and so thing that happened. You just made a connection and you moved on, and then this just made it confusing.
Yeah, I feel like he said, why does it have to be Mikasa? Because he knows that Mikasa's gonna have to kill him because he knows what happens in the future, and it's like showing the human sides of his emotions, where he says, "Why does it have to be the only person I care about in a way?" Which kind of contradicts him because he's still emotionally human, even though he's like a titan.
Mhm.
So it's just like because she doesn't submit to his will, she does something else, which is what ends the cycle in the end.
But you just said that you like he got asked the question why was it did it have to be Misaka? That means like Ymir chose her. That's what it means, and it was showed because when she killed Eren, Ymir popped up as in like, oh yeah, my natural protege. Now I can choose different. So that means you've chosen someone.
Yeah, but she didn't specifically choose her. She didn't wait 2,000 years for her. It's just what broke the cycle in the end. She's the one that broke the cycle. She wasn't waiting for her. It just happened. That just happened during the timeline, and she was the one that finally broke that cycle.
Why do you think she was waiting for her then?
She wasn't waiting for her. It
I mean,
was
not waiting for her. Why do you think she needed her to break the cycle?
because she needed her to find a person that doesn't submit to someone that she's like in love with and has like an emotional attachment to, and is not enslaved by their emotions, because Ymir was enslaved by emotions and couldn't leave King Fritz. And Mikasa is the total opposite of Ymir. So when Mikasa killed Eren to free everyone, it just showed Ymir that the cycle can be broken, and that's why she finally broke the cycle in the end. And that's why Eren was emotional, because he knew what um, Mikasa had to do.
What just that sounds good. But don't you think it kind of like towards the end, don't you think it kind of just hollows the whole point of what the show was about? Like in terms of them fighting the oppression, and then to realize the oppression was just this kind of like weird cycle based off her not being able to be released from this guy who's a murderous psychopath because you don't know, admittedly.
Mm.
No one knows. It's up to interpretation. And then it just this attack. The reason that Titans have been around for a long time is because of this weird fantasy situation that's just being kind of created because she needs someone to break the cycle, even though he's like a freak.
Yeah, I don't think it hollows the point. It's just not put to a simple, happy ending, because the entire storyline of the AOT is not simple. It's about like a cycle of hatred and violence inherited through 2,000 years of generations, and it's not meant to
Mm.
be like a one simple ending to a story. The tree symbolizes like the start, and the tree at the end symbolizes that it's still ongoing, because the hatred continues even after the rumbling, because the rumbling was meant to fix everything. It was meant to achieve the goals of Paradise, and is meant to stop all the hate. But the ending literally shows that, because it shows into the future as well.
Mhm.
That hatred is just a cycle and it's ongoing. So it's like a cliffhanger in a way. That's why people don't really like the ending, because Eren doesn't wipe out 100% of the population, and they all live happily ever after on an island. because it's not a simple story.
It's not about simplicity because there are shows that do the same thing, but it's just more layered in a way. But the layers aren't like, how do I put this? The layers aren't contradicting each other. The layer of love isn't contradicting the layer of like the trauma that's being instilled. The person that's meant to make the pattern isn't like contradicting the fact that the pattern is not, and it has nothing to do with the person that's breaking the pattern. The the connection with Ymir and Fritz is how, where's the connection to Misaka and Eren? Even if okay, you said it's not made simple, but to be honest, it's the way you put it makes it sound even more simple because if it's just about breaking a pattern, then I'm sure like there's other things that could be represented as breaking the pattern that's not as weird or as confusing, that's not as, I feel like there could be more things that's more like, well thought out that could be breaking the pattern.
Mm. I feel AOT gives like partial resolutions and long term like uncertainty for the ending, so you could think about it forever. It doesn't mean it's
Mm.
like bad writing. It just means that's good writing. It's not like it doesn't give a quick resolution to the hatred of society because it's meant to reflect real life and how the hatred of cycle never ever ends. So that's
But
how I feel.
don't you think it could be done in a better way?
No, I feel like it was done in the best way because it gave a good story and it had a good meaning behind it as well. Because it has Ymir's arc, which shows psychological trauma and breaking the attachment cycle with King Fritz, and the Mikasa's like contrast that resolves all the contrast and breaks the cycle, and
Mm.
Eren is like the final trigger that forces that final choice because obviously he knows the future. So there's like a cause and effect and a thematic system. It's not really a contradiction.
I see that. I see that. All right. In conclusion, Attack on Titans is an incredible show. The ending does not end the emotional weight. The foundation is weak and the parallels are forced. The ambiguity feels more like confusion, not depth. I really, I wanted to love the ending, but I really didn't. I just left feeling hollow, not because it was sad, but because it just stopped making sense. The foundations of the whole show with Ymir, there were just too much forced connection and forced parallels. What's your conclusion?
I feel like it was a good ending, to be honest, because it shows it's like a full loop, which shows don't really do that much. The writing is, I reckon, one of the best writings in the world. That's why it's got one of the top ratings on IMDb, because the amount of plot twist and the amount of times it loops the very start of the show to the very end of the show is, especially they did that in the ending as well. And they started with Ymir and they ended with Ymir, and it shows the how Eren's emotions change throughout the entirety of the show, and how like the character developed. And the ending shows like a built-up sort of romance between them, and it shows how the way Eren acted, is the result of the final ending of the show, because it shows he knew everything that happened in the past, and how he curated everything to happen for Mikasa to finally break the curse and free everyone. But it also leaves that cliffhanger sense to the point where it's like not fully over, because that cycle of hatred is still existing after everything that happened, which reflects on real life. So I feel like it was a good ending. Not a simple ending, but like a cliffhanger type of ending.